So on, the employee department reviews, because that'll be a little bit quicker, we talked about pursuing, some sort of a position for administration of the city. We just, I guess, planning for roles, duties, all those things, so.
So I move that we establish a position for something like a city administrator or operations manager or whatever we wanna call it, but we establish a position and we go ahead forward with building out the job description and moving forward with advertising the position and getting somebody in place.
Well, before anybody seconds that, I just want to talk a little bit.
Okay.
You know, the city's getting bigger. The mayor is not a full-time mayor. The statutes don't let us pay mayors, so mayors are volunteers just like the rest of us, which means they just have a limited amount of time because they have to make a living like the rest of us do. So, we're gonna have to get somebody to do that work, whether we like it or not, whether we like the budget for it or not, we're gonna have to do it. It just has to happen. There's lots of other stuff that have to get done that don't necessarily fall in the Eric's category or Adam's category or Dietrich's, and somebody's gonna have to do that stuff, so we're just gonna have to do it one way or the other. What it looks like and how it actually falls out,
Yeah.
we can refine that as we go.
Exactly.
But I don't see any way forward without it, especially with the growth coming into town.
And this by no means changes our form of government. We still have a mayor, council-led form of government. This person is not gonna be, the mayor is still gonna be in charge of the city.
Right, but
And
we have a part-time governing body and
Right.
the state of Texas won't let us have anything else, so.
Right.
Until we can get to a charter. Once we get to a charter, we can change, we can do whatever we want once we get to a charter. I mean, almost anything we want.
So this still keeps us in control. We're still monitoring, we're still driving the vision, we're still making sure that everything's happening, it's just we're not doing the day-to-day administrative stuff that desperately needs to be done.
Right, we just need help with the groundwork.
So I'll second that.
Okay, so Cindy for the first, Wade for the second, all in favor?
Aye.
That's everyone, so we will move forward with drafting that and getting that all ready. The next is BNSF litigation, so, we finally have an agreement that, we're at a place where there's really nothing to come back with, we're there. So I'm gonna ask Courtney to kind of go over some of those provisions and what's actually in the agreement that was offered, that we discussed, and then we'll do some discussion up here because we probably all have a feeling of where everybody is at this point, but we need to all each kind of communicate that before we take any votes. So, would you start with that, Courtney?
Absolutely, thank you, Mayor. As you all know, we have been negotiating with BNSF since May, when this body denied the preliminary plat application. BNSF filed a lawsuit against the city, asking the court to require the city to approve the plat. We have met with BNSF. We've traded agreements back and forth, and I believe we've gotten to a place that some basic protections are in place for the city that weren't in the previous development agreement. And so those are what I'm gonna go through now. The development agreement, or the development regulations include a buffer zone. That buffer zone is 500 feet from the edge of the property line. That buffer zone has to include vegetation, including berms, trees, shrubs, and turf. And then immediately inside the buffer zone, a fence that complies with the Code of Ordinances, section 27.8, has to be installed. So, you've got a fence, you've got 500 feet of buffer, and then you've got the property line. and that is around the entire property, both the land that's currently located inside the city limits and the land that is currently in the ETJ. The permitted uses for the city property, that's the property that's currently inside the city limits, M1 is the allowed uses, permitted uses in that property. For the property that's currently in the ETJ, it is also M1, but there are some M2 type uses that are allowed. Specifically asphalt manufacturing and refining, concrete batch plant, contractor storage, meal, grain, flour, food products, petroleum products, sales and wholesale, scrap metal sales and storage, cement lime, gypsum, plaster of Paris manufacture, chemical manufacturing, gas manufacturing, general commercial plant, food processing, pipe sales and supplies, plastics products, manufacture, not including the processing of raw materials, steel fabrication, storage, wholesale, warehouse, heavy. So those are the uses, and again, those heavier uses are only in the property that's currently in the ETJ. Height restrictions. Structures cannot be higher than 55 feet in height. If there is a silo or an antenna or elevated storage tank, then the elevated tank cannot exceed 175 feet in height. In addition to the buffer zone are setbacks. Those are setbacks for buildings, railroad spur tracks, outdoor storage areas, lay-down yards, and all other area on the leased tracts of land used for any kind of production or manufacturing. The minimum front, side, and rear yard setbacks are 320 feet. So that is a total of 820 feet that there cannot be a building or a laydown yard or outside storage or a railroad spur track. It has to be at least 820 feet inside their property line. Off-street parking has to conform to the current code of ordinances, as does off-street loading. Interior landscaping is not required, neither is interior screening. But based on what we've provided so far, as far as the buffer zone and the setbacks, that should not be an issue. Signage also has to conform to the code of regulations. Streets, if they have to if BNSF has to construct any streets, they have to be constructed to the current design standards. We included additional standards for lighting, requiring all lighting to be full cutoff lighting, to point directly down, to help maintain a dark sky or more of a dark sky setting. Adjacent residential property shall have no direct light source, shall be visible on the property line, and we have a maximum lumen requirement. We also have wireless communication protections. BNSF and any of its tenants or anybody in possession or control of any structure or building located on the property cannot lease that property for a third party to install wireless communication infrastructure. Also, noise regulations. No operations can be conducted in any manner that makes noise, sound level, or noise above a certain decibel amount shall not exceed 75 decibels permitted for a maximum of 15 minutes in any 1 hour's time period. Dust and odor is, and smoke and particulate matter are also addressed. So I believe these development regulations provide quite a bit more protection than was in than were placed in the first development agreement. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So if I remember correctly, in the first development agreement, the buffer was 50 feet. Was that right?
20. No,
There
they could
was
put
no-
something to the property line. The landscaping buffer was between Preston and the development. We don't care about that. We
Street
care about
frontages.
that. I don't care who sees it going by. What we care about now are the homes that are affected by it. So between BNSF's property line and the homes, they could have done it to the property line. They could have put a building or a lay yard or whatever on that property line. Well, now we've got the 820 feet of buffer with a masonry wall and the berms and the landscaping all between any home and their property. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's
That's fine.
2.5 football fields
Yeah,
of
roughly.
buffer with landscaping and masonry wall. That's huge. We protected the homes. Because remember, in the first agreement, we really didn't get any provisions, any safety for any residents or the city or anyone else. It was 950 acres of M2. There were no restrictions. They could do whatever they wanted. That's the agreement that was signed last time. 950 acres of M2. So,
On the silos, I thought it was any structural building in there cannot exceed the 55.
No, any building or structures meaning anything that is built or constructed on the property shall not exceed 55 feet in height. If a silo, antenna, or elevated water storage tank, those are the only 3 things, and they can not exceed 175 feet.
So like a water tower.
there is a good
Water
chance of
tower.
in up there.
Okay. And then, so if that's the case, a water tower, for example, the other part that you said in there with the communications, that means that they cannot put communications on that water tower.
Correct.
That's servicing that location.
Correct.
You mean co-locate?
Well, like,
They
obviously
cannot
doing a water
lease it.
tower that's gonna be for them, not coming into the city.
Right, no third party additional,
So-
which was important to wait. He brought
Yeah,
that to
so that's
this.
there, and then
conversation.
you said
Yeah.
antenna as well as silo. Silo, we get what silos are, we all see those going down south.
Yeah.
But the antenna, what was that? What antenna would they have? I forgot to even ask you that, I guess.
So the communications for the rail yard type stuff?
Yeah, that's what I was
Like
thinking.
one of the blinking antennas
Yeah.
that are over here,
I imagine
Yeah.
that they would have to have the FAA blinking things on.
Yeah.
if they put something in there of that height.
Yeah. Of that
Eliminated third parties, so it would be something only specific to the.
Only
Well, no, like-
specific
like
to
I said,
them, because
the
they-
antenna would be like that, the one, the big bright red ones that we see
Yeah.
out there. Okay.
Probably not even as tall as this, because I think those are around 225 feet.
Yeah.
Those are-
Yeah, those are limited to 175.
Okay. And then on the M1 extra outside of the city limits, it almost sounded like after you actually went through repeating that, it almost sounded like what is not included in that then?
There are a few things that are currently in your M2 that are not included.
Like, fertilizer.
Yeah, fertilizer. It's one of,
West Texas.
just
Right. And look, a lot of the items that were on the list that she did read, they have no intentions of anybody coming, like, they're not gonna manufacture gasoline there. You don't have the space for it, like, that's not even,
Well, I know,
it's on the list, but that's not something that they've even indicated, that would even be something that would ever come.
I understand that, and that's the thing, is when they
Me
first
neither.
originally showed us this, they were like, here's the 16 plots of what we're gonna look like.
Right.
They could lease the whole property out to one person,
Right,
or they could lease it out to 32 different people and have 32 different lots there, so. I mean, it's one of those, I mean, we are protecting it, it is a better, since there's no for sale sign there, they're not going anywhere.
they're not going anywhere.
this is a lot better than what we had originally. And a few trees, so, but,
And I tell you, right now, their planning plat shows, I think it was 12 to 15 tracks, these or lots in a plat, so it wasn't like a multitude of 30, but they're all
yeah.
an acre, 2 to 3 acre in size.
Mhm.
Now, the site plan's gonna have to be adjusted based on our new conditions of this.
Aren't they also making a contribution to the parks?
Oh, yeah, there is, the agreement includes a $20,000 contribution to, fund park improvements, to be dedicated for park improvements.
And also, training for the fire department?
Upon our request, there will be training, hazmat training for fire department personnel, yes.
Unlimited, so if we get more volunteers.
If we get more, every time we get more volunteers, those volunteers can receive, all we have to do is ask.
And that would help them in their career to find a permanent position in the firefighting world if they can stay here.
It also, they have their own very specialized teams, so back when, let's say a year ago, we were worried about how our firefighters gonna do this, they're probably not gonna ever have to, because their teams are so specialized, that they will have things, they're gonna have teams on site. This is what they do, so.
Is there, do we know if there's like a quality control manager of some sort that's
Yeah.
on site?
They have an
Yeah,
intense.
Their safety
System.
protocols
Yeah.
are.
So they've got their safety officer
Far
that'll
less
be out
than
there
what we could ever
to make sure
even
there's no valves,
legislate.
gaskets where we have to evacuate of some
Yeah.
sort.
They have their
Good to know.
own, but they're also under federal scrutiny
Right,
like no other.
yeah, it's the one thing we don't have to worry about.
I mean, they've got
At all.
stricter,
Controls.
rules.
Yeah. I know,
And truck drivers.
Yeah, I'm just making sure, cause I mean, I know it hasn't happened here, or maybe it has, but I just remember in my old town, there was a propane, I don't remember which one it was, factory that was doing the propane, and I mean, it was below a highway and something went wrong.
Yeah.
And the cloud went up above it, the flames went up above the actual overpass, so just didn't know if they had their own on-site quality control type manager.
There's gonna be, a safety profile built, and I'm certain that upon request, we could make sure that our safety folks are plugged into and
Yeah.
aware of.
Okay.
The bottom line is we started with M2 everywhere.
Yeah.
Which was cave on the board.
And we
It
got
never
nothing
was
in
going,
return.
it never was going away.
Yeah.
No,
That wasn't, on the table.
there was a strategy at one point,
There was, but it was pretty loose.
that's gone,
It was
that
pretty,
ship's out.
pretty loose and,
Wasn't in writing.
the way I look at it, if they didn't wanna be a partner, they would have continued on with the lawsuit. They didn't have to negotiate. I think they welcomed the negotiation.
Yeah, cause they got asked to come here and.
They got asked to come here and
They
much
spent a lot of
like
money
the, much like the Mustang deal,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna fault anybody for getting a good deal. But I respect the fact that they came back to the table. The big thing for me is the annexation. In the original deal was not for 10 years,
Right,
and now it's 5.
now it's 5.
And that's a 5-year project to get it built.
Yeah.
That's huge.
I think they want to partner. And I think that once we get past this and we can have dialogue,
You get people like me out of the conversation.
well, I like you.
No, it's been good, and
It's been good, but I
It's
think,
better when y'all are talking directly, not through attorneys.
Yes.
It just is.
It
And-
just is, yeah.
I think, the $20,000 contribution, that's fantastic, but, I mean, if you look at other cities where they've got a footprint, they do other stuff for cities. They have a library, grant for cities that I don't know that we
getting a BNSF collaborative grant.
Restore the water tower for me.
You just keep coming back to Florida. We gotta do something with it, yeah.
William's pulling his eyes at me.
I'm loving the
You
potato.
love me.
I'm telling you, basically.
Good things happen when you negotiate, and
But-
we were able to negotiate.
And this is not something that we just came up with. I mean, this has been, we've
Months.
been beating our heads for this for months and months, going back and forth. We have not been able to communicate about it because of the lawsuit, but also in the development contract is a provision to drop the lawsuit. So that will be in there
Upon
as well.
approval of the development agreement and approval of the preliminary plat, then the lawsuit will be dismissed.
So I wanna talk a little bit to all the people that were in the high school back in the summer of 2023. Everybody found out about this Burlington Northern project and everybody was pretty pissed off. I don't know a better word to describe it. There was a lot of anger and frustration. That frustration was much born from it being hidden from them as it was from finding out that they were coming. And a lot of people don't know, but after that happened, there was a lot of work done to investigate the possibility of not having Burlington Northern come here. I personally did a lot of work with a lot of people around here, a lot of landowners, and we had a plan that had a chance. It was a lot of work, and there was still a lot of risk. And I will give credit where it's due. Andy Messer worked with me. We put hours of effort into that, and so did a lot of landowners around here. So it wasn't that nobody is giving up and they're just saying, well, we're just gonna have to live with the railroad. We're not gonna take what one person suggested that we do. But that plan that we had in 2023 died with all the events of December of 2023. So what we have now is a large landowner that we have to work with. And if there's no way to do anything else, then the only thing we can do is come up with the best deal we can come up with. The first deal that was presented in May of 2023 was horrible. It was not good for the city, and this deal is far better. It has massive land areas, and you think Burlington Northern has 1,000 acres, but we pushed back 800-foot boundary. So they're not gonna use that 1,000 acres. They're gonna get some fraction of that. They did that voluntarily, they didn't have to, like Dave said. And a lot of people, since December of 2023, when we didn't have any other choice, a lot of people put in a lot of work to get us to this situation, which is far, far better than what we would have had in May of 2023. Dave's put in a lot of work. Wade's put in a lot of work. Courtney's put in a lot of work. It's not optimal, so to all those people that were there in that high school in that summer, this is not what everybody wanted, but it's far, far better than what we would have had otherwise. And we don't always get what we want, to quote Mick Jagger, but sometimes we get what we need. And we'll make it through. So, I'm gonna move that we accept that offer to settle from Burlington Northern, and, let's just start making the best of what we have in front of us.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have William with the first, David with the second, all in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Right.
I'd like to say no
I don't know,
to it. Does it have to be unanimous?
that's where we are. You just have to make the best
Just the
decision
majority.
based on the facts presented, that's your goal.
I mean, they're coming regardless, but I'm gonna say nay.
So the motion carries 4-1.